Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that the lines on the map have just stopped mattering. The fences, the checkpoints, passport controls, border walls, those guarded crossings that have divided our world for generations, all of them completely vanished overnight. Governments everywhere have just totally abandoned physical borders. No more frontier posts, no more customs lines, just open land and completely open movement.
It brings us face to face with a genuinely fascinating and maybe a little terrifying central question. What if governments actually abandon all physical borders? We aren't just talking about a minor policy tweak here or some simple shift in travel rules. This single hypothetical scenario would trigger a massive, global chain reaction that would fundamentally alter human civilization itself. Because once the lines we've drawn across the Earth disappear, we're forced to completely rewrite everything we know about sovereignty, economics, security, and even our own human identity.
All right, let's look at phase 1, the day boundaries disappear.
Instantly, right off the bat, you'd see two incredibly polarizing reactions to this new reality. On one side, you have a highly optimistic vision. For some, this is the ultimate dream of human freedom. Families that have been separated by strict frontiers are instantly reunited. And you get this vision of a unified humanity capable of easy, seamless travel without constant harassment or paperwork. But on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have a deeply pessimistic vision. For others, the reality is that a basic, foundational structure of political order has just been completely stripped away. Without that physical line in the sand, there's an immediate sense of exposure, extreme vulnerability, and a total loss of control. But both of these perspectives highlight the exact same truth. When physical barriers go away, governments are instantly forced to confront all the deeply rooted problems those borders were quietly holding back. Which brings us to our first falling domino in Section 2, the Great Migration Shift. Okay, let's dive right into this. When physical lines vanish, human movement naturally changes on an unprecedented scale. Now, people don't all move for the exact same reasons, obviously, but the forces pushing them are absolutely immense. You've got people fleeing war, escaping grinding poverty, running from severe climate stress, or just desperately seeking stability after an economic collapse. And naturally, human beings will move toward places they perceive as safer or wealthier. This means countries with strong economies and generous social systems would instantly face enormous, unimaginable pressure. Cities and rural areas near former borders would swell almost overnight, just completely overwhelming the old rules of political systems. Ultimately, a basic structure of political order simply vanishes. Think about it. Governments are fundamentally built around their ability to define their territory. If a state can no longer control its physical perimeter, leaders would instantly face fierce, intense public backlash. Citizens would legitimately start asking, what exactly is a government supposed to do if it can't even tell us where the country ends? Leaders would struggle to justify how basic laws, welfare, or citizenship even function anymore. Some places might embrace the change, while others would frankly go into complete panic mode.
Moving right along to the next part of our chain reaction, Section 3, Money, Markets, and Security. Economically, this would be a revolution, but a highly complex one. On one side, we could see an unbelievable economic boom. We're talking incredibly fast trade, completely streamlined supply chains with absolutely no customs delays, and a massive surge in global tourism and labor. A commercial truck could literally drive seamlessly from one country to another without idling for hours at a checkpoint. Industries could thrive with zero friction. But we have to flip the coin and look at the economic risk. States rely on borders for way more than just keeping people out. They desperately need them to collect tariffs, conduct security screening, and generate tax revenue. Without physical borders, governments suddenly lose crucial revenue streams, regulatory oversight, and the basic ability to manage the economic flows that keep their own domestic markets stable. And the security implications? They are intense, and they would happen incredibly fast. First, the physical fences vanish. Almost immediately, smuggling networks, criminal organizations, and extremist groups are going to exploit this newly opened movement because, let's be real, not everyone arrives with peaceful intentions. Then, states are forced to scramble. They'd be desperately trying to replace physical barriers with internal policing and cyber monitoring. Without a physical wall to literally slow down a threat, balancing total freedom of movement with basic public safety suddenly becomes the absolute hardest design problem of the century.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point in Section 4, Rewriting Law and Defense. We would essentially be facing an administrative nightmare of sheer, unprecedented scale. Jurisdiction, courts, and police, tax collection, labor rights, asylum, citizenship, Literally every single one of these systems requires a complete ground-up rewrite. Why? Because our current laws completely assume a physical territory under state control. Just imagine a seamless, borderless commute from El Paso to Juarez. If a worker effortlessly crosses what used to be a strict international line every single morning, whose labor laws apply? How do you collect their taxes? How do you protect that worker from exploitation? Everything from basic civil rights to the very definition of a citizen would have to be entirely reimagined.
Then there's the military aspect. Militaries would have to shift entirely from perimeter defense to internal resilience and rapid deployment. Traditional military strategy transforms overnight. You can no longer rely on a border wall or a fortified line to delay an incoming threat. In this new world, a threat could suddenly appear deep inside a country's territory much faster than before. This renders traditional border defense completely useless, forcing nations to rely heavily on intelligence sharing, advanced aerial surveillance, and lightning-fast internal deployment.
Let's pivot a bit now to the psychological side of things in Section 5, Rethinking Identity and Culture.
Consider this idea for a second. Borders are part of the story nations tell themselves about who they are. People naturally use borders to organize their mental maps of home and belonging. Think about taking a train from Geneva into neighboring France. That physical line, that literal sign saying you've entered a new country, creates a comforting sense of entering and leaving, of inside and outside. Without them, that old mental map gets incredibly blurry. The world suddenly feels much less anchored. People need narratives to organize their lives. And if governments abandon physical borders, they'd have to help citizens build an entirely new sense of belonging.
Which leads to a fascinating and frankly very tense cultural shift. On one side, we have incredible cultural blending. This is the creation of exciting hybrid societies where languages, cuisines, and traditions overlap in a really rich, shared cross-border life. But directly opposed to that is cultural anxiety. Many communities would feel severe, genuine anxiety over their heritage, their distinct languages, and their political influence being diluted or completely washed away. It's a very delicate balance between people feeling peacefully included in a newly overlapping global order and feeling deeply uncertain and threatened by it. So, as those national boundaries fade out, something else has to step up to take their place, and that's cities. Cities would become the real engines of identity, economy, and cross-border governance. Metropolitan areas would swell into massive cross-border zones of shared labor and shared administration. The old frontier town might just become another neighborhood in a much larger regional network. The fundamental meaning of geography totally changes, and these megacities become the true magnets for talent and trade. Finally, this brings us to a really surprising conclusion in Section 6, the rise of invisible borders. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the total abandonment of borders is actually kind of a myth. We wouldn't just have nothing. We'd transition from the old world of concrete walls, physical passports, and physical checkpoints straight into a new world of digital permissions, biometric access layers, and AI tracking. The border doesn't go away. It simply moves. It moves into layers of invisible infrastructure and data. The border does not disappear. It just transforms from a physical wall into a digital surveillance network. Airports become heavily identity-managed gateways. Work and services are organized through portable digital civic accounts. Now, this highly structured digital shift might seem more modern and maybe even more humane in some ways, but make no mistake, it introduces terrifying new fears. We're talking about centralized control, real-time tracking of movement, and a massive, unprecedented potential loss of privacy. Which leaves us with this final, profound question to think about. Can true freedom of movement actually coexist with fair protection? Or is a borderless world just a new kind of control system? If we take away the physical walls, do we just replace them with an invisible cage? If you found this what-if scenario gripping, it really just shows how deeply our daily lives depend on systems we rarely stop to question. Concepts like sovereignty, trust, identity, and stability are incredibly fragile. There are even bigger questions waiting to be explored about the world beneath our feet. So keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.